Hello everyone. So today I'm going off on a slight tangent with the Pop Up Parade figure series. About 2 years ago, Goodsmart Company had added much larger sizes to their Pop Up Parade lineup, i.e. XL for figures that stand around 40 centimeters tall and L for ones reaching up to 23 centimeters. In comparison, the regular size ones, of which make up the bulk of my collection, stand at around 17 to 18 centimeters in height. What you see here is an L-size Pop-Up Parade pre-painted figure of the priestess from the dark fantasy light novel series Goblin Slayer, which was later adapted into manga as well as anime. And yes, you heard right, she is called the Priestess and is a nameless character in the series. In a departure from the usual all-clear plastic box that regular-size Pop-Up Parade figures come in, the L or XL versions are instead packaged using light cardboard boxes with a glossy finish on the outside, in a style similar to crane prize figures. And that means colourful photographic images instead of direct visual access to the figure itself, like in the regular size versions. At the front is a view of the Priestess upper half, together with a different version of the Pop-Up Parade logo, one with a letter L next to it. The bottom left corner mentions the figure size again, while the bottom right corner denotes this to be the Goblin Slayer Season 2 version of the Priestess. And here, Goodsmart Company makes certain you are aware of her size by posing the figure in front of a huge letter L. On the back is yet another stylized logo of the letter L together with additional images, a bit smaller ones of the Priestess from the front and back. It's the most plain on the left side of the box, with a small image taking up less than 1/3 of the space. That brings us back to the front. There is one more side with images though, i.e. at the top that has that large L with an image of the Priestess upper half. Anyway, let's open up this rather large box and see what's inside, shall we? Unsurprisingly, we find the Priestess ensconced between two large and sturdy plastic blisters, with the figure itself and a staff, as well as the display base, all wrapped in clear plastic sheets. This protective packaging method seems to be the norm for the Japanese figure industry, at least is what I've noticed on figures from the budget price point all the way to the upper tier scale painted figures, including mid-tier figures from Goodsmart Company's Pop Up Parade series. There'll be lots to talk about once I have the Priestess, the staff and the base unpacked and unwrapped. While the process of removing the figure from its protective materials can be viewed if you so wish, it will be fast-forwarded sans any commentary with a timestamp at the end, provided in the description below, in the event you would like to skip this process altogether. So I'll be back once the Priestess has been unpacked and unwrapped. The Priestess herself comes fully pre-assembled, while her staff comes in two separate parts. And then of course there's the single piece of molded plastic, that's the display base. In transitioning to a larger scale, Goodsmart Company's reputation for figures with an excellent likeness to their anime version remains intact, as every facet of her details from her face to her hair and clothes are all accurately recreated from 2D to 3D. Her hair is the only part of the figure with paint shading, albeit a subtle one that sees the ends of her hair painted in a slightly darker yellow. Overall, the effect is almost imperceptible to the eye, but is there, and coupled with the intricate sculpt, makes for hair with depth. And while this tonality in color does not extend to the Priestess outfit, the figure makes up for it with cleanly painted details, such as the red brooch cum pendant and the gold trimmings that contrast well with the whites and blues of her clothing. Together with the nicely sculpted folds and creases of her outfit, such attention to detail ensures the figure remains visually interesting, sans any significant color shading. And from this angle, we can make out additional hues, i.e. orange on the insides of her attire and the black bands on the thigh-high boots. Her skin tone is fairly fair, and it brings out the blues of her eyes and the pinks of her open-mouthed smile. But this fair skin tone can be a double-edged sword, as her nose is rather poorly defined due to the lack of shading. Meanwhile, the details on her staff are simply fantastic. It has 4 small rings attached to the top end, which is reminiscent of staffs carried by Eastern Asian religious figures, and it comes in 2 parts, the second of which is the staff handle I'm holding in my hands. Lastly is the infamous Pop Up Parade base, which in this case is just a simple white round piece of plastic. So this concludes the once-over of the figure. Let's move on now to her assembly. Now from the get-go, the only tricky part of what to me seems like a fairly straightforward assembly process is the step involving the staff that the priestess is holding behind her back. Guzman Company obviously must have felt the same reservation I had, hence the inclusion of a piece of detailed assembly guide on how to thread the handle through her hair before attaching the top end of the staff to the handle. So let's begin by first trying to find out where exactly the hole or notch through which the handle will insert is located on the hair. As you can see, the voluminous quality of her sculpted hair makes the hole or notch rather difficult to find. Please bear with me as I try to locate that insertion point. There, I think I found it. I'm not sure if you can make out the small notch I'm referring to, so I'll point it out using the end of the staff handle like so. With the insertion point determined, it's time to thread the handle through that hole. Note that there's a tiny protrusion located roughly in the middle of the handle, and I believe that protrusion exists to stop the handle from sliding all the way through the hole or insertion point. In a way, it helps to secure the staff at a specific position so that it's not loose and moving around all the time. And I must point out that the protrusion merely rests upon that notch on her hair, which is partly the reason why you see me struggling a bit with the handle. A peg and hole connection system with a satisfying click sound to indicate a secure connection has been made would have been much easier to work with, but it is what it is. Anyway, I believe that's about as secure as I can make it. That leaves us with the attachment of the top end of the staff to the handle via a peg and hole connection, which I'll proceed to do now. Just so you know, the peg resides on the long handle that was threaded through her hair, while the hole is at the base of the top end. That's the priestess staff assembled. The connection is tight enough that it doesn't come apart even with some semi-rough handling that I'm applying to the staff. Do note that as I'm moving the staff to and fro, it's not sliding all the way through the hair thanks to the protrusion on the handle as well as notch on her hair. Assembly instructions, if you recall, focus only on attaching the staff to the priestess' left hand and does not touch upon assembly of the figure onto the base. But that's okay, because it's a straightforward exercise in matching the pegs on the figure's feet to the holes on the round base, as I'm trying to do here by using the work table for support. And with this final step, the assembly process for the L-size pop-up parade figure of the priestess from Season 2 of Goblin Slayer is now complete. For a better overall look at this large figure in its entirety, we'll switch to a full 360-degree view of her. With her total height slightly above 25 centimeters from the bottom of the base to the top of her head, the priestess herself, as measured from the bottom of her feet, actually stands at 23.5 centimeters, which means the base alone accounts for more than 1.5 centimeters in height. As such, by virtue of her size alone, the priestess certainly does not lack shelf presence. That presence is accentuated by the overall clean paint job, as well as great details on her staff, clothes, face, and hair. Generally, a lack of dynamism in a figure's pose would almost certainly count negatively against it, more so for a mid-tier figure. Yet, for the priestess, her rather reserved standing pose with the staff held behind her works in her favor by conforming to her shy and soft-spoken nature. And the way she is holding the staff, i.e. with the highly elaborate top end pointing downwards, helps to spread the details by not visually cluttering the upper half, which already consists of her face and hair. This adds some visual interest to the more bland lower half. She has a simple yet pleasing color scheme that sees the blues contrast well with not only the complementary orange hues found on the insides of her outfit, but also with the blonde yellows of her hair and the gold on her staff. This simple color contrast also tie in well with the predominant whites of a priestess attire and the whites of the small round base. This interplay between cool and warm hues make what would normally be a boring and staid religious outfit look more aesthetically pleasing. It's easy to take for granted the key feature of all pop-up parade figures I've encountered so far. That is the unerring resemblance of the 3D versions to their 2D animated counterparts. But that's not something I'm wont to do. The likeness factor is, to me, a critical factor that can make or break a pre-painted scale figure. And in this regard, the Good Smile Company's Goblin Slayer Priestess excels yet again. But while the Priestess' facial details are accurate, being a mid-tier figure, it does lack details that the more expensive upper-tier versions of her have. For example, an upper-tier version of the Priestess from Hakuri Muzume has additional features like blushes on her cheeks as well as having her teeth showing. Why the comparison, you may ask? Well, it's to highlight the fact that there'll almost always be better quality in terms of likeness out there among the more expensive upper-tier figure equivalents. Yet for its price point, the level of consistency in recreating a good likeness factor, and more importantly, with the sheer number of characters from a wide variety of anime genres being turned into collectible figures, all this makes the Pop-Up Parade series one of the most accessible and affordable to collectors looking for their favorite anime character in figure form. Of course, details on the priestess upper half is not limited to her face only. Her hair has fairly intricate details that gives it volume and depth, and it's also the only part of the figure that was given an application of paint shading. Meanwhile, clothing details such as her nun-like hat, to the red brooch cum necklace and the gold braid-like fasteners on her robe, as well as frills on her sleeves, together with the previously discussed clothing color scheme, help increase visual eye candy in an otherwise staid attire. With so many good things on the figure's upper half, it therefore irks me that Good Smile Company didn't paint her fingernails. Being one of the more expensive figures on the mid-tier spectrum, I find this seemingly minor oversight to be quite unforgivable, as we are not dealing with budget-friendly price figures anymore. Unfortunately, it seems like Good Smile Company did not use the larger size Pop-Up Parade figures as a platform to craft more elaborate bases for them to stand on. They are still using a simple bare-bones base molded in a monotone hue to display the priestess, which in this case is just a piece of round white base. I feel that they could have used the L-size figure as an opportunity to craft an interesting mini vignette for the display base, but in fairness to the company, cost considerations that allow the L-size Pop-Up Parade figures to remain competitively priced in the mid-tier category could have shelved such ambitions. Meanwhile, at this slightly top-down angle, you can actually get a clearer view of the orange-hued insides of her robe via reflections on the mirrored turntable. To the best of my knowledge, there isn't any overlap between the L-size Pop-Up Parade series with the XL and standard sizes in the same series. So in other words, the Goblin Slayer Priestess figure is a unique one-of-a-kind in the series without a differently sized equivalent. And despite being a bit on the expensive side for a pre-printed figure in the mid-tier category, retailing for 8,800 yen on her retail release, the Priestess could in a way be considered a safe addition to a collection. What I mean by safe is that most Pop-Up Parade figures can be expected to have reasonably clean paint jobs, as well as excellent details that leave you in no doubt you are clearly getting a figure version of the anime character, all at a reasonable price. For example, the likeness factor is usually spot on in terms of facial and clothing details, as well as poses that reflect the character's demeanor, which is clearly the case for the Priestess from Goblin Slayer Season 2. Yet a valid criticism that tends to be hurled at the Pop-Up Parade series is that while the poses adopted by their figures do indeed reflect the characters' respective idiosyncrasies, the poses tend to be rather boring in general. while it was no different for the priestess, who in this case adopted a simple demure standing pose. Luckily for her, it was in keeping with her shy and reserved demeanor. And to be fair, Good Smile Company did try to indirectly inject some form of dynamism in the form of the outward flaring of her robe and hair. At this larger scale, it's easier for a mid-tier figure to look more bland, because mid-tier figures, due to cost considerations, rarely have the complexity inherent in most upper-tier figures. But the L-size priestess overcomes these potential issues with some clever design choices, such as the paint gradation applied on her fairly intricate hair sculpt and the excellent recreation of her staff. In addition to that, the use of cleanly painted details on her attire, such as the gold accessories and trimmings, combined with a basic yet beautifully complementary color scheme, both help to mitigate what is essentially a flat, non-gradated paintwork on the priestess outfit. For all that's good about this L-size Pop-Up Parade pre-painted figure, I still can't help but feel that Good Smile Company's decision to replicate the bare-bones nature of its display bases found in their smaller size versions from the same Pop-Up Parade series is a sorely missed opportunity to differentiate the L-size figures from their standard ones in more than just size alone. Now, I can't speak for other collectors, but my general perception of the larger size Pop-Up Parade figures are that apart from better defined details, there's not much to differentiate it from their smaller cousins. In the Priestess case, they could have made the base a stone pavement, which, while simple in itself, is still better than the bare plastic that we have. But that minor gripe should not distract from what this L-size Pop-Up Parade figure of the Priestess from Season 2 of Goblin Slayer does do well. That is, a figure on the pricier spectrum of the mid-tier category that is an excellent 3D recreation of a 2D character with clean paintwork and selected paint gradation, as well as superb character details. With all that in mind, I'm giving this L-size Pop-Up Parade figure of the Priestess from Season 2 of Goblin Slayer a rating of Diamond or A rank. I believe this to be a must-have figure for fans of the anime series. While there's no denying there are more detailed and elaborate versions of the Priestess from the upper tier category, for most collectors, this version is at the best price point for what it delivers. Before I leave you, here's a size comparison between the standard and L-size versions of the Pop-Up Parade series. It also serves as a mini preview of the upcoming Pop-Up Parade figure that I'm going to review in my channel. As you can see, the size difference is really significant and would be readily noticeable on your display shelf. Well, we have reached the end of this video. Please like if you have enjoyed it, and do subscribe if you want more content. Until we meet in the next video, thanks so much for watching. Be well and be happy.